It's the holidays, man, and most barbecue channels are thinking about meat. You gotta have some sides to go with all that meat, man. In this video, I'm gonna be showing you 3 of the most iconic side dishes in all of Southern cuisine. So we're gonna kick it off with some smoked macaroni and cheese. Stay tuned because at the beginning or at the end of each one of these videos, I'm gonna be giving you some tips that I left out of the individual videos. Let's get right into the details. The first thing we need to do is get some boiling water going. Let's fill a pot with some water, get it on the stove, get a fire under it, and sprinkle some salt in it. Now, if you're wondering why people add salt to boiling water, it's because the salt makes whatever you're cooking in that boiling water taste better. So while that's coming up to a boil, the next thing we want to do is get started shredding our cheese. Now for this recipe, I'm going to be using pepper jack cheese and mozzarella cheese. By the way, if at all possible, you want to shred your cheese yourself. You don't want to buy it in the bag. The bag stuff is not going to melt as good as if you shred it yourself. And the reason why is because when you buy shredded cheese in a bag, there's a waxy coating on the cheese. They have to put that on there to keep it from all sticking to each other. Block cheese will cost you just a little bit more, but it's so much more worth it, man. So I'm done shredding all my cheese and my water is boiling right now. So now it's time to add my elbow macaroni in. Now I want you to keep in mind that we are going to finish this on the grill. So I don't want to bring my macaroni all the way up to completely done. What we're going to do instead is we're going to follow the directions on the package for al dente, but we're going to take a minute off of that time, right? So while my macaroni is boiling, I'm going to go ahead and gather up all my shredded cheese and put it into a bowl so it's just easier to move over to the stove when it's time. All right, my timer just went off. That means my pasta is ready. So it's time to drain the water off and get it in a bowl. Now I'm gonna stir some oil into this pasta, and that's just gonna keep it from sticking together while I'm making my roux. This is the most important step of making a nice creamy mac and cheese. All right, so I got my cast iron skillet hot, and so now we're just gonna add a stick of butter in there and let that melt. So after the butter is melted, we're gonna add about 1/4 cup of flour. We're gonna add it gradually, continually stirring. Now, the best thing to use for this is a whisk. I don't happen to have a whisk here handy, but I got a poor man's whisk right here, a fork, so that's gonna work just as well. So you wanna continue stirring this thing. You probably wanna turn the heat down a little bit, but you wanna continue stirring your flour constantly until it starts to turn a light brown and the smell kind of starts to change. But you have to be very careful here because if you burn the flour, the whole thing is done. You got to start over, man. The roux is the foundation of this dish, so you can't burn it. So turn your fire down and just take your time and continually stir until you start to see that flour turn light brown. Once you see that light brown pasty consistency, it's time to start adding some liquid to make a sauce. Now you have 2 choices. You can use heavy cream or you can use milk. The only real difference in them is that heavy cream is going to make it a lot more creamier. I like to use milk because milk is something that I have available. It's something that I use all the time. I'd have to go to the store and buy heavy cream. The key is to just keep gradually adding milk and continuing to stir and work your roux until it starts to get to the consistency you like. What you're looking for is a nice, creamy, even consistency with no lumps in it. I like how this is looking right now. I like the consistency of it, so I'm gonna go ahead and start folding in my cheese. Now I'm just adding in my cheese gradually, continuing to stir. That's really the key, is continuing to stir and adding everything gradually. If it's too thick, at this point you're adding either water or you can use chicken broth. All right, so this sauce is about where I like it. It's about where I want it right now. So I'm ready to add the pasta, but before I add the pasta, I want to go ahead and season this sauce. Now, my sister told me about this particular seasoning that I'm using. This is pretty salty, so I used it sparingly, and then I just added extra pepper to it, and it came out really, really good. And now I'm going to go ahead and start gradually folding in all this pasta. So now let's get out here and get the grill set up. We're doing the same setup I normally use. Indirect coals banked to one side behind a couple of bricks, and space for my dish on the other side. So I'm just gonna put my skillet right here on the opposite side of the coals. We're gonna be running somewhere between 300 and 350 degrees. Now you have to remember that the pasta is almost done. We took it all the way up to just below al dente, so it's not gonna take very long at all. So I'm gonna come back in about 30 minutes and check this thing. My mac and cheese has started to brown on the top. It's bubbling, it's looking amazing, man. So I'm confident that it's ready all the way through, and I'm ready to pull this thing off. I hope you enjoyed this cook. You gotta try it. It is next level. You won't want macaroni and cheese any other way once you do it like this. Let's run on the grill, y'all. Later. I have two very important tips for you on this macaroni and cheese recipe. Number one, when you're doing your roux, make sure you keep those temperatures low. Make sure you keep that fire low. If you have it too high, the oils inside of the cheeses will start to separate once you put it in the oven, and when you pull it out, you'll have oily macaroni and cheese. So keep those temperatures low when you're making that roux. The second thing is, make sure that your roux, make sure it's on the thin, runny side when you're getting ready to put it into the oven. Cheese is gonna be cheese, and cheese is gonna thicken as it goes. So if your sauce is kind of firm when it's going in there, it's gonna be even firmer when it's coming out. So make sure it's on the runny side when you're putting it in there. So I wanted to come up with a recipe that really represents the culture, man. Represents how we do it in the South, represents how black people do it, and this is that recipe. So first, let's get the cabbage cleaned and cut. I'm gonna take off this top layer and just toss it in the trash. Then I cut the ends off and toss those in the trash as well. And next I want to just cut the cabbage heads in half so I can remove that hard core in the center. We're just going to cut that out with our knife. Next I just took those halves, placed them face down, and just cut them into wedges. Once I got them all chopped into wedges, I went ahead and chopped those in half just to make sure I was getting a nice manageable bite each time. You don't want a big whole leaf of cabbage when you bite into it. Okay, so here is where I start to deviate from the traditional Southern fried cabbage way of doing it, because I need to cook this cabbage down before I can put it in the skillet and take it to the grill. And normally that would be done in a skillet with some oil. But instead of cooking it in oil on the stove, I'm just going to parboil it for a few minutes to reduce the volume of it down enough to put it in my cast iron skillet. Boiling it on the stove like this also saves a lot of time versus the time it would take to get that cabbage to cook down that way on the grill. Plus, to me, there's really just no reason to boil anything on the grill. All right, so while my cabbage is cooking down on the stove top, I'm gonna go out here and get my grill set up for a low and slow cook. Here you can see I've made a pile of unlit coals on one side of the grills, and I have a handful of lit coals here in my charcoal chimney. And I'm just gonna pour those over to one side of those unlit coals. They will gradually and slowly light those unlit coals and give me a nice, even, low temperature over a long period of time. Back inside, my cabbage is starting to cook down, so I want to get some more ingredients going. I already cut up some bell peppers and some onions, and since I don't have any bacon, I'm going to use these Earl Campbell's links. I think that'll be good. Once those are cooked down a little bit, I'll add some minced garlic right there at the end. Checking back in on my cabbage, I can see that it's cooked down quite a bit, so I think it's time to start adding it to the skillet a little bit at a time. So here's where I start seasoning my cabbage. And I wanted to do something to give it a more authentic kind of barbecue taste. Not like barbecue sauce, but like you did this on the grill, didn't you? Kind of taste. I'm gonna be using one of my favorite rubs, Famous Dave's rib rub. Now this says rib rubs, but it's a really very balanced rub that you can use in just about almost anything. It's one of the most popular rubs out there. And then on the back end, just a little bit, just to give it a little tingle in your mouth, a little bit of that right there, Creole seasoning. So all throughout this cook, because I'm working in a skillet, only a little bit of my cabbage is exposed at any one time. So what I have to do is keep seasoning and flipping and seasoning. So you're gonna see me doing that throughout the rest of this cook. So I'm just gonna be giving it a nice liberal seasoning of the Famous Dave's, and then coming back behind that and giving it a very light seasoning of the, a very light shake of the Creole seasoning. See that color it's taking on? It's cooking down a little more too. Still a little crunchy, but it's getting soft and it's cooking down. So I'm just gonna let this take its own sweet time. I'm gonna keep putting a little bit of this rub in here as I keep stirring it, just to make sure it's all coated. This is looking good, man. All right, let's get a quick taste. This is good. Really good. And I really like where it is right now as far as texture goes, because it's not overly really soft and limp, but it's not like super crunchy like it ain't done. It's got a little snap to it, and that rub is perfect. All of the seasonings are coming together. It's more than likely the smoke is gonna settle in even more the next day, so this is the perfect time to pull it. I think this is a win, man, and I really haven't seen anybody do it quite this way as far as smoked cabbage goes. So there it is, man. As you can see, very straightforward, very simple, nothing complicated at all. Cabbage itself, man, with that smoke on it was delicious. I've done a few sides. The only side dish that I've done on the grill that I liked better than this one was the peach bourbon baked beans. I put a link right here for you to watch that one. Rob Cross here with Ron on the grill. And by the end of this video, you will know everything you need to know to make these delicious candied yams on your grill at home. So let's get straight to the business, y'all. This is about a half chimney full of charcoal. And I'm pouring it over to one side and kind of spreading it out a little bit because this is where we're going to be grilling our sweet potatoes. Now, sweet potatoes are very dense, and it can take a long time to get them tender on the grill if you don't parboil them first. If you don't know what parboiling is, par short partially, it just means boiling them for a couple of minutes just to get them a little soft. I've already done that, and what I did was wait till the water came to a boil and then put my potatoes in that water and let them go for about 5 minutes. Then I took them out of that hot water and ran some cold water on them just to make them, first of all, easier to handle. Second of all, it stops the cooking process. So now it's time to cut them up, and I'm going to be cutting mine into some nice thick sticks. That's going to make them easier to move around the grill, turn them over and flip them and everything without them breaking apart. So now it's time to season my sweet potatoes, and I'm just going to toss them in some olive oil first so my season will stick. And then I'm going to be seasoning them with this brown sugar rub by Kendall. Now there is something I need to tell you about this rub, guys. Something very, very important that you're going to need to know when you make this recipe if you're planning to use this particular rub. Now, I'm going to talk to you about that at the end of this video, so make sure you stick around at the end because it's something that you definitely need to know. All right, it's time to take these babies out to the grill. The grill is nice and hot. We're going to be grilling these directly over the coals, so you need to stay close. Can't walk away from these. We're going to be constantly turning them and flipping them until we get all of the caramelization and char that we want. All right, so I'm just about done. Got them all in the pans, but before I take them inside, I need to make some room on the grill for my pan. I'm going to do that by pushing all of the coals to one side. Now it's time to add all the ingredients that will make the sweet, sticky sauce that gives this dish its name. They don't call this dish candied yams for nothing, man. There's a lot of sugar in this dish. By the way, I'm making a pretty small batch here because I'm just kind of experimenting with the dish, but you'll need to adjust these quantities for the amount that you're going to be making. So we're going to need 1/2 cup of brown sugar, 1/2 cup of white sugar, 1/2 stick of butter, about a teaspoon of nutmeg, 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. These are just approximates. And a few drops of vanilla throughout the pan. And just to add some moisture to create some steam when I get it out on the grill, I added about 1/2 cup of water. Now I'm going to cover this dish with foil and put it out on the grill on the opposite side of the coals for about 15 minutes. And I'm doing that to create a little steam inside of there to help those sweet potatoes get tender. All right, it's been about 10, 15 minutes or so, and you can see that all of my ingredients have liquefied and melted. I did a little pinch off of one of the sweet potato wedges, and that confirmed that they're nice and tender. Now all I need to do is give everything a good stir so everything is coated up. But I will not be putting the foil paper back on. It's very important that you leave the foil paper off. If you leave it on, it's going to continue to create steam, and that steam is going to keep your sauce from getting thick. All right, it's been about another 10, 15 minutes, and as you can see, the glaze has thickened up really nicely, just like you want it to be for candied yams, nice and sticky. And there you have it, man. We're done. Sweet, sticky, decadent candied yams made on the grill. All right, so as promised, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this barbecue rub that I used. Brown sugar rub by Kinder's. First of all, I love this stuff, man. It is fantastic. Great on ribs or any of the traditional stuff that you're typically doing around the 4th of July or the grilling holidays. But it has a very distinctively barbecue flavor that for us kind of made it not quite right for Thanksgiving. Perfect though as a side dish for anything that you'd be doing on one of the grilling holidays like 4th of July or Memorial Day, Labor Day, any of those. Now, you can still make this dish for Thanksgiving and get the traditional flavor. All you got to do is leave it off sweet potatoes. Toss them in oil so you get the char and you get the caramelization when you grill them, but just don't put the seasoning on. You'll be good to go. All right, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. I hope you're going to make it. If you do, come back and let me know how it went for you. It's Ron on the Grill, y'all. Peace.